moderated by Priyanka Singh Jha. It's a huge pleasure for us to host such a great panel for the session South the New Bollywood. Handing over the mic to our moderator Priyanka Singh Jha, I would request her to take over the sessions.
Thank you. So yes, it's a very interesting panel, very accomplished, and a very timely and pertinent subject is South, our South movies, the new Bollywood. Well, I wouldn't probably go so far as saying that because I'm not sure it sounds entirely flattering and does justice to the South film industry, which comprises of many languages, not just it's not just one single block. So, my first question, and any of you can take this, is that this shift that we are seeing towards the South films, South language films, which comprises of Kannada films, Malayalam films, Telugu and Tamil films. Obviously, it's not come about overnight. The South has always had a very robust film industry, and for some reason, it has long lived in the shadow of the Hindi film industry, which has been the most prominent of all the language industries in India. What do you think has sort of spurred this uh, the movies to come to the forefront now?
Well, I don't know if I should be starting this because there are filmmakers and scholars. I'm just a lay person who's interested in films. It's okay. So I mean, it's just like my two bits of as a more as a viewer really than film scholar. But I as you said, I think the topic of the discussion itself, is South the New Bollywood. I really don't think the Southern cinema is thinking of Bollywood like that. I mean, it's not this versus that. I mean, they are really in their own universe. They are doing their own thing. I mean, I don't think, for instance, it, no, no. No, what I wanted to say, I don't think like, for instance, say before Paranjit makes a film, he thinks, what happened in Bollywood, or has there been a film like this? Or when, Dilesh Pothan in Malayalam is making Joji, which is an adaptation of, Macbeth, which is absolutely fantastic. I don't think he's really thinking, is it going to match with Vishal Bharadwaj's or not? So there, I really, so that's what I mean. It's a different universe really. But you're right. The Southern cinema has lived somewhat in the shadows of Bollywood, because it's the money has been the budgets are huge, the reach is much more, and and the audiences, the fans are, but from the 40s and the 50s, Southern cinema has there has been a lot of back and forth, like say Raj Kapoor made so many of his films in Chennai studios, and there were producers were from the south, but I think right now it's a completely different set of people in the Southern cinema, both writers, directors, actors. They are experimenting with such great new stuff, which leaves the kind of so-called experimentation that is happening in Bollywood way behind. Where would you say, like I mean, it's personally probably not a great film, but say a film like Jai Bhim, by a proper mainstream actor like Surya on caste, on caste politics, where there is this lawyer. It's in fact based on a sort of true events. Yeah, and it's and he takes it along. I mean, the film has its flaws, but it's like, say, I would say an Akshay Kumar or a Ajay Devgan doing something like that in Hindi, and it's a hit. It's done well. It's critically acclaimed, and it's also done well. So, to reiterate what I said, I think it's a different universe out there. They are experimenting like absolutely in various directions, in themes, in just the filmatic, the cinematic experience. Like say you see something like this Angamale Diaries. It's the way it is shot, the way it's edited. There is, I think, some 17-minute long sequence which is uncut. So they're having a real ball there, I think.
I'm just going to put the same question in a slightly different way to Dr. Maya and Balaji. The thing is that, as you said, the South industry they're not really competing with anyone. They're just trying to tell the stories that interest them, using technology and stories rather well. But of late, we have definitely seen in the last 2 years that somewhere they are beginning to get a mainstream pan India appeal, which was perhaps limited. It's not like it was never there. We've seen a lot of films, that appeal to the Hindi mass audience also, even earlier times. Movies like Suryavansham and various others. But now we are seeing a greater pan India appeal that is cutting across. Different demographics. The success of Kantara recently was something to consider. Is something to consider, and RRR is another sort of mainstream film which cut across a pan-Indian audience, which was very heartening. And why is that happening? If both of you could just share your perspectives.
So I think, Priyanka, what you said was it is basically today we are looking at it from Kantara and RRR. There is no other movie in the last 1 year where we are looking at Bollywood, comparing it with Tollywood or Sandalwood or anything. It's basically these two movies that have stood out and have had a pan global, I think, kind of an appeal. And that was bound to happen, I think, as the industries are growing. And I would like Suri said that not compare and put South Indian cinema in a different box and put Bollywood in a different box. Of course, there are differences and similarities everywhere that you see, but I think it's basically because of these two movies. Today, we are sitting here talking on this panel, and I don't think any other movie that really crossed these barriers as much as these two movies did. And Kantara was a very, very localized theme. It was not even a pan India theme like maybe RRR, which appeals with its songs or whatever. So, what is the magic? I think we are still trying to figure out what is the magic. What was the magic? And I think the magic will continue with people like Rakshit being at the helm of affairs, and he thinks differently. The way it is shot, Kantara, the way it is scripted, I think it can compete with any other movie technologically because no other Kannada movie had we seen so far which excelled on these fronts, especially on the story, the fight sequence, the action sequences, the storyline, and the bridge between the culture and the storyline, and so many other social themes that were woven in it. So I think it's going to continue, and happy to be from the Kannada world and seeing sitting here talking about how we are trying to compare ourselves with Bollywood. We were always stand apart. I think South was always standing alone and Bollywood was standing separately. There was never a complete Indian cinema, so to speak. But I think it's interesting what's happening, and we're only looking forward, I think, isn't it?
I think it's great times if you really, if you keep aside the comparisons which are like, inescapable, they will come about for purposes of analysis and chronicling it from a journalistic point of view. But from a creative point of view, I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Because, when you have two industries, different language industries at par, I think it might just pave the way for a more robust Indian film industry, where different players from different sectors are interacting and working at a more equal level. What would you say?
Yeah, I think the pandemic brought the boom in the OTT, and with the subtitling and all that, I think the language barrier broke down. And the another thing that happened was that was a time when South films went massy and the Bollywood films went a bit classy. They tried to do something classy, tried to do something offbeat. But the massy nature of the South films, with the fact that now there was no, with the subtitling, there was no language barrier, I think that propelled them forward. I think the big opportunity for us to see that now that there is no watertight compartment between Bollywood and Collywood and Sandalwood and Collywood and all that. How can we as Indian cinema benchmark ourselves against, say, a Hollywood? Now that we are one, where do you think we can be? Because if you look at it, Indian films, regardless of the language, they all have their own pockets. If you look at Tamil cinema, it is not Tamil Nadu anymore, right? It is, you look at Malaysia, you look at Singapore, you look at Sri Lanka, you look at Myanmar, you look at UK. not only do they watch Indian made Tamil films, they also have their own Tamil films. Like there is a Malaysian Tamil film, there is a Sri Lankan Tamil film. So that way, it's good for Indian cinema that it is spreading so far and wide that it's becoming an ecosystem rather than saying this is Hollywood, rather than getting boxed into a particular geography. I think that's a big picture for us.
In fact, I'm so glad you touched upon that, because that was something that I wanted to put to all of you. That the international market, which has become a very powerful driving force for our cinema. At one point, there was this whole NRI market, and also the Middle East, which consumed a lot of Hindi cinema, and which did wonders for its box office success. And this happened like when this was this watershed moment when Hindi films became glossier. I'm talking, I guess, in the 90s, early 2000s, when they became more glossy, westernized, catering to an English speaking audience, which was more urbane and more chic and more hip, and which didn't really relate to the rural hinterland subjects and characterization and stories as much as it was earlier. And this appealed not just to the youth or in the metro cities in India, but also to the Indians who had settled abroad and were living in US, UK, Europe, so on and so forth. I think Shah Rukh Khan films were these movies which kind of led from the front and created a huge market outside of India. Among Indians, and then some more, because he was also very popular in Germany and all of that, right? Now we are seeing, as you mentioned, a different market, which is also an international market, Malaysia and the Far East, China. China is of course like Hindi films, but then Japan. I think Rajnikant has always been has had a cult following in Japan, because action films do extremely well out there, and so we are seeing these two streams of cinema reaching out to different international markets, and also, like, there's a huge NRI segment of people from South India within US, UK, and so forth, who may lean towards the South language films, just the way Hindi speaking audiences lean towards Hindi films, and this is creating a very interesting market dynamic. So I'd like you guys to, just jump in and tell us something more about that. Satish, you'd like to go?
Also, just to sort of make a distinction from what Maya was saying, see, I don't know if this discussion is now relevant here because of RRR and KGF and Pushpa. See, I want to these are blockbusters. In fact, these are the films, the southern films that you could say are very Bollywood or very Hollywood. If Hollywood is this sort of epitome of film success, and then the Marvel universe, the action, the superheroes, it's coming down from there, where say something like a Pathan, and then there is a RRR. So actually these films there it is, you could say that they are trying to ape Hollywood or Bollywood, or there I would say them as one category. But the distinctive films are Kantara, for instance. It's a different film. It's so rooted, it's so specific to one little ritual in a village in Karnataka, which many people in Bangalore also probably don't know. For that film to become such a hit, nationwide, like I watched it in Delhi in deep sort of, sort of a Punjabi Jat kind of audience, and the way it moved them and the way they were cheering without really knowing actually what. So there is a connect, see, in the blockbuster scene, there is that connect happening, which is, I think, great. In the sense that it is, that is the identity that I think an Indian film industry. Though Priyanka, I don't think we need to have an Indian film industry really. I would say that each identity is it's quite like the Kantara, for instance, a very Kannada film. It's a very, and then if that, so we have, the problem we have is, first of all, we have to traverse from Karnataka to Delhi to Bombay to Maharashtra, etc. Right, before we go even to the world. So many people are, in Bihar, I mean, reasonably so. I mean, wouldn't know about so much happening. I'm just saying it's such a wide. We have such a cultural heritage. That is one. The point. The other point is, the language of films. The commercial success is one thing. But when you talk about, say, Iranian films, like say about a decade ago. They had their language. There was an ecosystem happening. Makbal Baf is sort of, we are feeding off. Kiarostami. There is somebody's writing, somebody's editing, somebody's directing. So that kind of an ecosystem, particularly I think in Malayalam cinema, is it's something that I kind of watch and I know of, that I can talk a little bit more confidently. I'm sure it's happening elsewhere too. But like say, the relationship between, I'll just take 1 minute. These are all going to be tongue twisters. Somebody might want to note down the names. I myself, I do speak Malayalam, but I falter. Like for instance, there is. A camaraderie or a deal happening between this director called Dileesh Pothan and this actor called Fahad Fasil. They have made 3 films so far. One is called Mahesh and the Pradigaram. It basically means Mahesh's Revenge. The other one is which won I think the national award in Malayalam, Kerala National Award. Then the other one is even more tough to say. Thundi Mudalam Drishtikshim. Basically, it's something like translates to the informer and the witness. Yeah. Then his other film so Dileesh is also an actor apart from being a director. His last film is Joji, which is an adaptation of Macbeth. But again, it is if somebody didn't tell you that it's an adaptation of Macbeth, it works fine. It's so rooted in this hilly area in Kerala of a very close family where the patriarch is is this real bully actually, and so that's how the way he's adapted it, and it's shot in COVID times also. So what is happening, I think, is these films, like I wouldn't, sitting in Delhi, probably have had a chance to see them elsewhere. This OTT has certainly opened up. And my wife, who's not from the South, we sit together and watch it quite, happily with the subtitles. And she's as impressed with them as I am, in the sense that, so it is the point I'm trying to make is these blockbusters are one thing, but there is, I think, the other fantastic stuff happening in terms of storytelling, in terms of experimenting. Like to give you this one, the Thundi Mudalam Drishikshim, that's just nothing. It's basically, I'll just give you a one-line storyline without any spoilers, but it's basically, there's a thief who's stolen a necklace in a bus of a lady who's sitting in front of him, and he swallows it. So that he to hide it basically. But the lady sees that it's a sone ka har. It's a thing. So he swallows, but the woman sees it. She makes she sort of creates a ruckus, and the whole the bus is stopped, and he's caught and he's thrown in prison. This is Fahad Fasil. This is a thief, and they are a newlywed. So this is all the story is. And now the way the film goes, sometimes you're for the thief. The lady who has complained herself is like having doubts. Should I have done it or not done it? It's only a necklace after all. Is he more in need of it? The lot of the social fabric, the way it is rooted, in I think this is in Idiki, if I'm not wrong. The way the film is rooted, the police station is, it's like a real police station in one of these places, and it just really speaking, the script is so fluid, and as an audience, you're wondering about your own moralities, your own, whose side are you on, etc., etc. So they make you think about all this. So this is, the language. So this film, it's not a big film. It's a very small film actually, but it is so interestingly done. It's riveting, and I'm so glad that so many people can now watch it who do not speak or read Malayalam.
I think that's a great point, really. Like, like literature, if you have like subtitles, like literary translations are great when you want to explore different language stories. And I think the beauty of it is, like you said, blockbusters are something that, where you look for the universality of theme and emotions, where there's a pan-India or pan-Asian audience that can connect to it. That's one part of it. But there's also the other part of what you mentioned, that there are these very interesting stories which you don't mind, whatever language or culture. It may not be something that I'm familiar with culturally, but it's very intriguing to see that, oh my God, like this happens in another part of the world or another part of the country. And wow, like, just the way we enjoy European cinema or Korean cinema, and why not? Like, we'd be the richer for it to know that we can have these multiple stories that we can enjoy if we transcend the language barriers, right? And as you rightly said, the OTT with subtitles has given it a big push forward. So keeping all these things in mind, uh, where do you think, how do you think that, what is going to be the impact of this, this new sort of path on different language films, even Marathi films? Some of them are like beautiful. They're fantastic stories, There's a movie called Court, which came some time back, and it was such a gem of a film. And there are many more in different languages. So what would you say is, how is this all going to shape the South Indian cinema in particular, and other language films, if you want to comment on that?
I think, Balaji said,
Hello.
the OTT has really opened up. I mean, you can sit at home and have the luxury of choosing the language you want, watching it with subtitles. I think this is the major, what do you say, the benchmarker which is there for the audience, the luxury of choice, the luxury of sitting at home and watching and not taking the effort of going into a theater and watching. Of course, the theater experience, nothing to beat it. But I think the second major point, which I would like to bring out here in terms of other than this, is the kind of budgeting that has been going into South Indian films, which was not there earlier. Okay, when we look at, I'll be talking it only from the Sandalwood point of view. Uh, when you look at films in the 70s or the 80s or even the late 90s, the budgeting that was spent on that, and if you look at a Kantara or look at a KGF, the budgeting that has gone into the production, I think that has been making a big difference in the way the film is shaping up, in the way that people are thinking down south, and even RRR for that matter. I think this is a point that all of us should think about it, because earlier the South, especially Kannada industry, was not spending this much at all. I mean, the kind of spends that are going into production value, the need to do it, the need to be competitive on a technology level, I think that is what is making the killer point. And that's where Kantara has scored. That's where KGF scored. I mean, the production value was so slick. Uh, Never before in Kannada movies have we seen this. And this is where the new thinking is going, with the new stream of directors and thinkers and youngsters coming into this kind of a profession and proving themselves. I think that's making a very big difference. And today we are seeing many experiments going on in Sandalwood and being spent. And I'm very heartened to see that, because as an industry, as a business, this is a very key point. When producers understand that, directors understand that, and the entire technical team understands that we need to think beyond a certain small budget, try to make it for an audience that is limited.
Exactly. The share of Kannada films in South Indian films used to be around 4 to 5%. Now it's gone up to 15, 16%. And I'm sure we're all happy, and Maya's even more happier than all of us. I'll tell you, I was speaking with Amal Palekar a few years back, and he said somewhere Bollywood has believed that we are Indian cinema. There was this big brother bullying because Hindi was a language and Hindi was the Indian language. And so we are Bollywood. And there's been some sort of a denial of the acceptance of the classy and the massy value of other regional languages. For example, even 15 years back or 20 years back, the South Indian films used to account for about more than 55% of the overall revenue. So what was Bollywood bullying everyone about? There was no reason. And even if you look at like Kantara, something very localized has every reason to succeed. If you look at Pothir Panchali, the only thing it didn't have is a financial backing, but it was acclaimed worldwide. So something happening in a small village in Bengal, in rural Bengal, if you can reach out to the whole world, and all it takes is financial backing, which is what Kantara, that's the arc that connects Pothir Panchali to maybe a Kantara. Even Ghatashraddha, look at Girish Kasaravalli's movie, it's classy. people believed, or Bollywood believed, and I'm not trying to point a finger at Bollywood, I'm saying somewhere it was believed that these belong only to a small circuit. ये मद्रासी मूवी है, ठीक है, वो वहां पे है, उनकी उनकी जगह है. The 4-digit mark somewhere was a wake-up call for Bollywood. 1,000 crores, that 4-digit number woke them up. And now they are playing catch up. How can we get there? Couple of it fell flat on the face. But the fact is, always, if you look at the first multiplex came up in Madras, not in Bombay, right? The first movies to be screened, or the private theater screening and all that. And Bollywood and your South Indian films, especially Tamil cinema, was always flush with money. How else could they attract a Dilip Kumar or a Rajendra Kumar or a Shankar Jaikishan or a Rajinder Kishan to go and work for them? They were very prompt with their payments. They used to treat them very well. Shooting would happen on schedule. Movies would release on time. Even recording studios, people in the Bollywood film industry, they say it's extremely professional. There would be a car to pick them up exactly at 8:45, and the recording starts at 9 a.m. Lunch break at 2 a.m., come back at 1 a.m., 1 p.m., come back at 2 to 6, khatam. So it always had that professionalism, it always had that money. A little bit of it is also just the way that Bollywood had believed that they were the big brother, they represented Indian cinema. Even some of the political pushbacks in South always kept the Hindi cinema out. They said, no, that is an alien language for us. Our language is our regional language. But movies like Yadon Ki Barat and Sholay infiltrated that. They went beyond those barriers. Yadon Ki Barat ran a Diamond Jubilee in Madras, right? Now that with a more cosmopolitan public, a lot of North Indians living in South and vice versa, I think even that cultural pushback, the walls have sort of submerged now. I think it's more fluid, okay? And the fact that always South Indian films accounted for a big chunk of revenue, and that they were flush with revenue, and they had that culture, they had the professional discipline. Now that is sort of giving a sort of a bit of a jolt to Bollywood, but that's a short term. They're still going to learn from each other. And anyway, movies are getting replicated in every language. They're getting dubbed in every language. So in the long term, it's going to be good for us when we can all stand up together and say, here is the Masi films, and here is the classic films, even Marathi films or Bengali films or whatever, and here is Indian cinema.
That's a great point to make, really, and yeah, sure.
I really think that, yes, budgets are very important as film producers and filmmakers. I can only imagine how important that's going to be. But if you ask me, I don't think, this 4-digit crore mark, or that is going to be the challenge for Bollywood. I'm sure they'll be able to match it sooner or later. I think the real challenge for Bollywood that the Southern cinema is giving is in the writing, is in, coming out with out of the box story ideas. It is in coming up with actors and actresses, who are very, very sort of ordinary looking, down to earth, normal people. It's there is this film called The Great Indian Kitchen, which has been much talked about, this Malayalam film. I mean, the way it exposes patriarchy in society so subtly and, so devastatingly, it's simply amazing. The other big point which the other big difference between Bollywood and Southern cinema, I think Southern cinema is highly political. They don't shy away from either social or political issues. There is like I said, this Great Indian film Kitchen is a very small film, really. It's and it's for a long period. It just shows the protagonist, this lady, just cooking in the kitchen, and the men are sitting outside demanding this and that. It's the most common thing that happens in most societies in most part of the country, and yet the devastating effect it has going on. Seeing her doing the same thing again and again and again. It's and again, this is the film which became a hit. It was well received by the it ran and ran. So I think the challenge for Bollywood, money is, yes, it's a big issue, and though I think Bollywood will be able to match that, this is where I think they'll have to come up with more hitting strong political ideas, which and Priyanka, the other one, the point, see, the universal and the local, there is again, this thing about, I think the more local you make a film about, it's the more universal. Exactly. It'll go. Absolutely. Like you see, you watch a Krzysztof Kieslowski film sitting in Poland, he's making about a short film about love. Why has it touched people in Asia, in the US. It's because, I mean, it's a universe, it's a local thing there about, see, that's what I mean. It's such a universal thing. It's about coveting, it's about unrequited love, it's about, these feelings feelings are universal, but the issues, the more I feel that the local you base, the wider the audience will be.
I think that's absolutely true because when I watched this movie called Makhi by Rajamouli, and it was I watched it in the theater in Mumbai, and it was such a fantastic film, and I was so impressed. I was like, oh my god, who's this person? Like, I'd like to meet him because it's so imaginative, and it's kind of it's not trying to be like trying to imitate something from Hollywood, and it's very original in its thought and the way that story is set. It's a simple story, love story gone wrong, and revenge and all of that, but it's just so well done. And then eventually, when I had a chance to meet with him during Bahubali, again I went on the set and I was so impressed by the kind of work that they were doing because there was so much VFX involved and the storyboarding. I had a chance to get a glimpse into it and it was impeccable. There was so much work that had gone into it. They had thought it through, and all the actors were on board, giving it their best, not trying to see whose scene is bigger and all of that. And that was like, I was like, wow, like, I mean, this is something that definitely Hindi movies could learn from because especially the VFX part, the way that they were sort of going about it, it was so systematic, organized, well thought through. And that was a technical aspect, but very important in days to come because, a lot of movies, if they want to really make fantasy and, tell those kind of stories, it's something that would, or superhero stories would be great for them to learn from. And so that was, something that, and then the second remarkable thing, which we were talking about OTTs and things like that, we saw The Family Man. And what you were talking about, the collapse of cultural and linguistic barriers. The Family Man is a multilingual sort of kind of a show, because I can't really call it typically a Hindi show, or and it's got a bit of both. It's got English also, and that's how we communicate. We speak that way, and to me that's something that we're going to see more of, and there's also the appeal of stars. So we're seeing like an increasing appeal of stars like Dulquer Salman, Fahad Fazil, of course Prabhas, and all other big names, now Ramcharan. So we will see that that appeal is also going to spill over, to different audiences, because eventually when you see a star who's like fits a story, fits a role, and delivers on the promise, that's what is the best bet for stardom, and I think that is happening for South stars, which probably didn't happen in the past to the same extent. The factors can be multiple. Like we've had a lot of like Rajnikant has acted in Hindi movies, and as has Kamal Hassan, and the success was probably not to the same degree that they had received in the South films, But now I think there is a tipping point for multiple reasons, which I'd leave you guys to analyze, and then we'll take any questions that you guys might have. But this is a subject we can go on and on about. But so I'd like you guys to weigh in a little bit about the stardom and the popularity factor of and whether that's like sort of transcending the linguistic barriers and regional barriers.
As I said, okay, I'll just take 30 seconds. The first tipping point came in the 50s and 60s. 50s, when Dilip Kumar and Rajendra Kumar and the big stars were in South. The second tipping point came in the 80s. Kamala Hassan, Rajnikant, Sridevi, all three of them made their debuts with a bang within 2 years of each other. Now, the third tipping point is more well spread out. Okay, there are as many Bollywood stars working in Southern productions as vice versa. So I think the tipping point, we have not seen one tipping point and stand out on the graph. It's spread over, it's mixing. Instead of tipping, it's become a mixing point now.
I mean, in all this, though, I would, what I would caution against is, I hope, we are not saying that Southern cinema is going to get Bollywoodized. I hope they keep their uniqueness. I hope they keep their stories, the local stories that they are trying to say, and keep the, the difference. that it's it's no, it's very easy to become a sameness is boring. The thrill is being different.
So I think one more interesting point is the fact of you're looking at actors, directors. Compare the South with the Bollywood again. You're seeing a very new wave of people coming out in the South movies. But I feel somewhere in Bollywood there is a little bit of a young blood still missing there. Where you're looking at it. But look at this South rage here. The entire Fahad Fasil to Kantara to Rishabh
Rishabh
the entire lot is still in their late 30s, early 40s, and this is the entire rage, the young blood. That's Yash, of course. See him, has a pan global appeal. So has Rishabh's acting and directing skills. So there is this age also that is.
I think
And
it's
if
a
you look at
fantastic
Shah Rukh Khan in
point that you make,
Pathaan or
but
something like that,
we
you're
have a
gonna
lot of
have
young
problem.
actors, like if you look beyond the three Khans who are now in their
Yeah,
50s.
in the 50s,
But you have a Ranbir Kapoor and you have a Shahid Kapoor, but
still
but
it's the mold
compared to
again.
so that's
Yeah.
the interesting challenge for them now, that compared to the stars that you mentioned, they probably don't have
So
that
it's
pan
such
India
a-
appeal, or if they do, then it's not matching up at this point. So that's something to ponder. Satish, you wanted to add?
Just one small anecdote. So we were traveling to Tawang recently in September, and our cab driver, who's Assamese, on the way was saying that मैं सलमान खान का fan होता था, अब पुष्पा, Allu Arjun. I mean, this is such a weird thing to hear. From a Assamese, we are driving on the way, on the way to Tawang to hear about Pushpa. It's that is what the impact has been.
Yes. It's that
Absolutely. I think
macho
Pushpa,
yeah.
No, okay, carry on.
Yeah. It's that Pushpa macho-ness, the KGF and Kantara. If you look at the heroism in the three, it's something that's very different. I don't think in Bollywood we have seen this. And I think there's something to be very proud of, I think.
Even in Bollywood, there are some very young, talented directors. Manish Jha, who made the film called Matrubhumi, A Nation Without Women, or INS Kazi, who made that film. So there are some good, bold directors who are willing to experiment with themes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It's like Jay Santoshima. Nobody, even the director, producer, couldn't figure out that he was in for such a big bonanza, but it happened. I think the story is stick to good cinema. For example, like Calcutta 71. Today, if it gets released again, okay, with a similar story, because it tells a particular point in time which is very localized, or Ek Pratidin. Everything that happens between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. the next day morning, that's something people are going to love. But people assume that is only for the film festival circuit. A theatrical release won't help, though Calcutta 71 had that, but Ek Pratidin couldn't enjoy that. But let's stick to quality, and may it have those big muzzle flexing elements like what we have in Pushpa or what we have in RRR. That's okay, nothing wrong with that, because even Diwar was muzzle flexing and chest thumping. If we get all the elements of a class of a Marathi and a Bengali cinema, and the money of a South Indian cinema, and the sheer reach of Bollywood even within India, I think somewhere it'll all come together. Why even Punjabi films? There's so many good Punjabi films that get made on those, and I've seen one. And so I think it's someone has to step back and figure out how I can get all these elements together. Since language doesn't matter anyway now, right? Since language is universal now, so let's get all the elements in and see what works.
So I think we're running short of time, but we'll have to wrap up the session. Happy to take one question because I have such a wonderful panel. You can't let them go without one question. So.
That was a very, very interesting session. I think I can see the excitement in your faces. You guys can go on and on and on. So just talking about remakes, like Shehzada released a couple of weeks ago and it flopped, whereas Allu Arjun's Kala was a huge hit. Even Lucifer, which was a super duper hit in Malayalam, which was remade in Telugu called Godfather and dubbed into Hindi, it flopped miserably. Yeah. So now, is there, are remakes going to be reduced, or, with the subtitle being the biggest hero? So, is this where something?
That's a great question, actually, because I think that remakes is we were talking about yesterday also in my session that remakes are something that people see as like a safe, foolproof formula, right? So okay, this has worked in like Tamil, so let's remake it. But you have to understand the syntax of it. You can't kill the story, and casting, because a particular actor has worked very well in that particular story, and I think it helps to keep the same actor even if the story is being told in a different language and a similar like, okay, you can tweak the sensibility a little bit according to the audience if there is any difference. But and I think that is something that anybody who's remaking a film will have to bear in mind. I think actors play a huge role in the remakes, the success of remakes. So we had a very successful remake in Kabir Singh, for example,
Arjun
and
Reddy.
yeah, and Shahid did a very good job, right? I watched both the films and I saw that he did a very good job. Of course, the original performance was a standout performance as well, but Shahid's performance worked for the Hindi audience. So I think that that needs to be, kept in mind, that who's the actor who's going to be part of the remake. Should they keep the original actor who was in the, original language film? And of course, then you have to see the grammar of the film. You really have to balance that out. You can't.
Just see time. I mean, like you have the same Shahid.
Yeah. So it depends, like some stories work well with a particular actor. That's exactly my point. Like,
Give me a crystal ball, and I'll tell you for sure what's going to work and what's not going to work.
That's it.
so did you want to add to that point?
Well, I mean, I really don't think there is any sure shot formula for success. As you said, one is a hit, the other is a flop. So, though I really don't, I'm not very, I'm not a big fan of just going on making, remakes of. I mean, it's a very lazy way to do something. Actually, why not think for yourself and to come up with better story ideas. So, like for instance, Drishyam for me worked in Malayalam. It didn't work for me in Hindi, though it was a hit. I mean, the film did well, but it just, I mean, there's certain ethos, I mean, the certain, the little nuances that Mohanlal brings, in the Malayalam version. I at least thought Ajay Devgan just kind of completely missed it. So I'm frankly not a very big fan of making these remakes. And well, if some succeed, that's good. But I hope more flop and this tops.
Well, thank you guys. What a wonderful panel. Always, a pleasure to have people on the panel who know so much more than you, because that adds a lovely perspective and we always learn more. And thank you for being here for this session. And being a lovely audience. Thank you so much.
It was great to hear such a great panel. On behalf of KLF team, I would like to thank for all our panelists for hosting such a great session. I hope the audience would have definitely enjoyed it. So thank you so much, ma'am, sir. We have the next session lined up here, and also the panelists